"Just sign here, Grandma," he smiled. But the paper said, "Permanent admission." I locked eyes with the nurse, and she slowly shook her head. That's when I realized I wasn't supposed to leave. Before I dive into this story that changed everything I thought I knew about family, I'd love to know where you're listening from today. Drop your location in the comments below, give this video a thumbs up, and if you're new here, hit subscribe to hear more stories about standing up when it matters most. Now let me take you back to how my world crumbled in a single afternoon. My name is Dorothy Manning, I'm 78 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who I could trust in this world. I've always been proud of my independence. Even after losing my husband Harold 5 years ago, I maintained my 3-bedroom house in suburban Denver, drove myself to the grocery store every Tuesday, and hosted Sunday dinners for whoever in the family bothered to show up. Most weeks, that was just Michael. Michael was my youngest daughter, Patricia's boy, 28 years old with those same green eyes that reminded me so much of Harold. He was the one who fixed my leaky faucet without being asked, who called every Wednesday just to chat, who remembered my birthday when his own mother forgot. If you had told me that morning that Michael would be the one to betray me, I would have laughed in your face. "Grandma Dorothy," he said that Tuesday morning in October, settling into Harold's old recliner with his usual cup of coffee. "I've been thinking about something, and I need you to hear me out." I was folding laundry at the kitchen table, the same routine I'd followed for decades. "What's on your mind, sweetheart? I worry about you being alone in this big house." His voice carried that concerned tone I'd heard from him before, usually when he was about to suggest I let him help with something. "What if something happens? What if you fall and can't reach the phone?" I set down one of Harold's old shirts. I still couldn't bring myself to donate them. "Michael, we've talked about this. I'm fine. Dr. Rodriguez says I'm healthier than most people half my age." I know. He held up his hands in that gentle way of his. "But what if we just looked at some options? Not to move in anywhere, just to see what's available if you ever needed it." The way he said it made it sound so reasonable, so caring. This was Michael, after all, the boy who brought me soup when I had the flu, who sat with me in the hospital when I had my gallbladder surgery. "There's this beautiful place called Sunset Manor about 20 minutes from here," he continued, pulling out his phone to show me pictures. "It's more like a luxury resort than a nursing home. They have activities, great food, and the best part is you could have your own apartment, but with help nearby if you need it." The photos on his phone did look nice. Modern buildings, landscaped gardens, elderly people smiling while playing cards. But something in my gut twisted. I wasn't ready for this conversation, and I certainly wasn't ready to even think about leaving the home Harold and I had built together. "Maybe someday," I said carefully, "but not now, Michael. I'm not ready." His smile faltered for just a second, so quick I almost missed it. "Of course, Grandma. I'm not saying now. I'm just saying maybe we could take a look, just a visit. Think of it as gathering information for the future." I should have said no right then. I should have trusted that knot in my stomach. Instead, I saw the genuine concern in his eyes, the same eyes that had looked up at me when he was 7 years old and scraped his knee, trusting me to make it better. "Just a visit," I agreed. "To look around." "Just a visit," he confirmed, and his smile returned full force. "I'll set up an appointment for Thursday afternoon. You'll see how nice it is, and then we'll go get ice cream after. Deal?" "Deal." As he hugged me goodbye that day, I felt that familiar warmth of being loved and cared for. Michael was looking out for me, just like always. He was the grandson who remembered that I preferred vanilla over chocolate, who knew I got nervous driving at night, who understood that this house wasn't just property to me. It was Harold's presence in every creaky floorboard and faded wallpaper pattern. But even as I waved goodbye from my front porch, watching him walk to his car with that confident stride, something felt different. Maybe it was the way he'd been so prepared with those photos, or how quickly he'd gotten that appointment, or the fact that he'd called it gathering information instead of just a visit. I pushed those doubts aside. This was Michael, my Michael, the boy I'd raised half the time when Patricia was too busy with her career to be a proper mother. He would never hurt me. Thursday was only 2 days away, but it felt like a lifetime of worry compressed into 48 hours. I found myself walking through my house differently, seeing it through the eyes of someone who might have to leave it. The kitchen where I'd baked countless birthday cakes, the living room where Harold and I had watched the moon landing, the bedroom where I'd whispered prayers over sleepless nights. Would I really have to give all this up someday? But it was just a visit, just information gathering. Michael had promised, I had no idea that promises, like trust, could be weapons in the wrong hands. Thursday arrived with one of those perfect autumn days that makes Colorado feel like heaven. Crisp air, golden leaves dancing in the breeze, and a sky so blue it looked painted. I chose my best navy dress, the one Harold always said brought out my eyes, and my pearl earrings. If I was going to tour this place, I wanted to look like the independent, dignified woman I still was. Michael arrived precisely at 2 p.m., just as he'd promised, but something was off from the moment I opened the door. He was dressed more formally than usual. A pressed shirt, dress pants, even a tie. For a simple tour? "You look beautiful, Grandma," he said, but his smile seemed strained. "Practiced. Ready for our adventure?" "Adventure?" I laughed nervously. I thought this was just a quick look around. Of course. Poor choice of words. He offered me his arm as we walked to his car. "I'm just excited for you to see how nice this place is." During the 20-minute drive, Michael seemed unusually chatty, filling every silence with commentary about the weather, the changing leaves, anything but what we were actually doing. I found myself studying his profile as he drove. This young man I thought I knew better than anyone. When had his jaw gotten so set, so determined? "Michael, honey, you seem nervous," I said as we turned into the Sunset Manor parking lot. "Nervous? No, not nervous, just, I want this to go well. I want you to see all the possibilities." The facility was indeed beautiful. Modern brick buildings arranged around courtyards, with walkways lined by autumn flowers. Residents sat on benches in the sunshine, some reading, others chatting with visitors. It looked peaceful, even inviting. But as we walked toward the main entrance, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. Several families were saying tearful goodbyes to elderly relatives at the front door. Not visiting, leaving them. The relatives weren't going back to cars. They were being escorted inside with suitcases. "Looks like moving day for some folks," I observed, trying to keep my voice light. Michael followed my gaze and nodded quickly. "Yeah, I think Thursdays are popular for transitions." Transitions. Not visits, not tours, transitions. The lobby was elegantly appointed with comfortable seating areas and a beautiful stone fireplace. Classical music played softly in the background, and the smell of fresh flowers masked what I assumed was the usual institutional odor. A woman behind the reception desk looked up with a smile that seemed too practiced, too bright. "Mr. Chen," she called out, "and this must be Mrs. Manning. We've been expecting you." Expecting me? Michael had said he'd made an appointment for a tour, but why did it feel like they were expecting me specifically? "Hello, Mrs. Manning. I'm Jennifer, the admissions coordinator." The woman came around the desk to shake my hand, her grip lingering a moment too long. "Michael has told us so much about you. We're so excited to welcome you to the Sunset Manor family." "Oh, I'm just looking today," I said quickly. "This is just a tour." Jennifer's eyes flicked to Michael for just a moment, a look I couldn't quite read. "Of course," she said smoothly. "Let me show you around our beautiful facilities." The tour was comprehensive. Dining rooms with white tablecloths and fresh flowers, activity rooms where residents played bingo and worked on puzzles, a library with floor-to-ceiling windows, even a small theater. Everything was clean, modern, and thoughtfully designed. Under different circumstances, I might have been impressed. But I kept noticing things that bothered me. The way Michael stayed close to Jennifer, speaking in low tones during moments when I was distracted by the tour. The fact that several staff members greeted me by name, even though I was supposedly just visiting. The way Jennifer kept mentioning "when you move in" instead of "if you ever decide to move in." Most disturbing of all was the way other residents looked at me, not with welcome or curiosity, but with something that looked like pity. One elderly woman actually caught my eye and mouthed the word "run." I was beginning to feel like I was in a dream, one of those dreams where everything looks normal on the surface, but underneath, something is terribly wrong. "And this," Jennifer said, stopping in front of a door marked 247, "would be your apartment." She unlocked the door and gestured for me to enter. It was a lovely one-bedroom unit with a small kitchen, comfortable living area, and a view of the gardens. Sunlight streamed through clean windows, and someone had even placed fresh flowers on the coffee table. "It's very nice," I said honestly, "but I'm not ready to make any decisions today. I just wanted to see what was available for the future." "Of course," Jennifer said again, but her smile was becoming more fixed by the minute. "Why don't we head back to my office? I have some information packets to give you, and there are just a few forms we need to go over. Forms. The word hit me like a cold wind. As we walked back through the corridors, I caught sight of a familiar figure in scrubs, a young black woman with kind eyes who was standing at the nurse's station. She looked up as we passed, and I saw something in her expression that made me slow my steps. Concern, warning, but Michael's hand was on my elbow, gently guiding me forward, and I told myself I was imagining things. This was just a tour, just gathering information for the future. I had no idea that the future was about to arrive whether I wanted it or not. Jennifer's office was smaller than I expected, with barely enough room for her desk, 2 visitor chairs, and a filing cabinet that seemed to loom over everything. The walls were covered with certificates and photos of smiling residents, but somehow the room felt more like a trap than a place of business. "Please, have a seat," Jennifer said, gesturing to the chairs across from her desk. Michael held one for me, ever the gentleman, but his hand trembled slightly as he helped me settle in. "Now," Jennifer began, pulling a manila folder from her desk drawer, "I have some information about our services and fee structure. Michael mentioned that you're very interested in making Sunset Manor your new home." "Actually," I interrupted, "I never said I was interested in moving. This is just a preliminary visit to see what might be available someday in the future." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer's smile flickered, and Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair beside me. "Of course," Jennifer said, but she continued pulling papers from the folder. "However, since you're here, and since Michael has been so thorough in preparing for this transition, perhaps we could just review the admission paperwork. You don't have to make any commitments today, but it would save time if you ever do decide to move forward." She spread several documents across her desk, and I leaned forward to look at them. Financial disclosure forms, medical history questionnaires, emergency contact information, all with my name already filled in at the top in Michael's handwriting. "Michael," I said slowly, "why is my name already on these forms?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I just wanted to save time, Grandma. I filled out the basic information we could do ahead of time. You know, your name, address, that kind of thing. But as I looked more closely at the papers, I saw that much more than basic information had been filled out. Someone had listed my medical conditions, my medications, even my social security number. How had Michael gotten access to all of this information? "There's one more form," Jennifer said, sliding a single sheet of paper toward me. "This is just a preliminary admission agreement. Think of it as holding your place in line for when you're ready." I picked up the paper, and the words at the top made my blood run cold. Permanent admission agreement. Not preliminary. Not holding a place. Permanent admission. My hands began to shake as I read further. The form was requesting immediate placement, with a move-in date of today. Today. There were sections about transferring power of attorney, liquidating assets, and surrendering my driver's license and house keys. "This says permanent admission," I whispered, looking up at Michael. "This says I'm moving in today." Michael's face had gone pale, but he reached across to squeeze my hand. "Grandma, just trust me on this. I've been talking to Dr. Rodriguez and he thinks—" "Dr. Rodriguez?" I jerked my hand away from his. "You've been talking to my doctor behind my back?" "Only because I love you, and I'm worried about—" "This is insane!" I stood up so quickly that my chair scraped against the floor. "I am not signing this. I am not moving anywhere. We are leaving. Now." But as I turned toward the door, I found it was closed. When had Jennifer closed it? "Mrs. Manning," Jennifer said in that calm, professional tone, "please sit down. I know this is overwhelming, but Michael has explained your situation to us. We understand that you've been having some memory issues, some confusion." "I have no memory issues!" I spun around to face them both. "I remember everything perfectly, including the fact that 20 minutes ago I was told this was just a tour." That's when I saw her. Through the small window in Jennifer's office door, I could see the young nurse I'd noticed earlier. She was standing in the hallway, and when our eyes met, she slowly, deliberately shook her head. It was a warning. Clear as day. She was telling me not to sign anything. "Just sign here, Grandma," Michael said, pointing to the signature line on the admission form. His smile was back, but now it looked twisted, false. "Trust me. This is what's best for you." The room felt like it was spinning. This couldn't be happening. This was my grandson, the boy I'd helped raise, the young man who called me every week and fixed my faucet and brought me soup when I was sick. This couldn't be real, but the paper in my hands was real. The locked door was real. The pity in the nurse's eyes was real. "You planned this," I said quietly, the truth hitting me like a physical blow. "This was never just a visit. You planned to leave me here today." Michael's mask finally slipped completely. "Grandma, you can't live alone anymore. The house is too much for you. You're getting confused, forgetful. Last week you called me 3 times asking if you'd already taken your medication. Because I wanted to be careful. That doesn't make me incompetent. And the bills," he continued, his voice gaining strength as if he'd rehearsed this speech. "You missed the electric payment last month. You've been buying duplicates at the grocery store. You left the stove on overnight 2 weeks ago." Every accusation hit me like a slap. Some of them were even true. I had been a little more forgetful lately, a little more anxious about daily tasks, but that didn't make me incompetent. That didn't give him the right to make decisions about my life without consulting me. "Even if all of that were true," I said, my voice shaking with rage, "it doesn't give you the right to trick me. It doesn't give you the right to lie to me." Jennifer cleared her throat. "Mrs. Manning, I understand this is difficult, but we've already prepared your room. Your belongings from home will be delivered tomorrow. Michael has been very thorough in planning your transition." "My belongings?" The room spun faster. "What belongings?" Michael finally looked directly at me, and in his eyes I saw not the loving grandson I thought I knew, but a stranger, a calculating stranger. "I've already started packing some of your things, Grandma. Just the essentials. Clothes, photos, your favorite books. The house is going on the market next week." The house, our house, Harold's house. The house where I'd planned to live out my remaining years, surrounded by 50 years of memories. "You can't sell my house," I whispered. "Actually," Jennifer said, consulting the paperwork, "according to the power of attorney documents you signed last month." "I never signed any power of attorney." Michael pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "Yes, you did, Grandma. Remember? I told you it was just in case of emergency. You signed it right here in your kitchen." I stared at the document he showed me. It was my signature, all right, but I remembered that day differently. He'd told me it was a form to help him access my insurance information if I was ever in the hospital. He'd said it would make things easier if I ever had a medical emergency. He'd lied. About everything. The room was silent except for the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. Through the window, I could see the nurse still standing in the hallway. She'd been joined by others now. A man in scrubs, another woman in a white coat. They were watching, waiting. "I won't sign this," I said firmly, setting the admission form back on Jennifer's desk. "And I'm leaving. Right now." But as I reached for the door handle, Michael spoke again, and his words stopped me cold. "Grandma, if you don't sign willingly, Dr. Patterson can have you committed for a psychiatric evaluation. He's already reviewed your case. The choice is yours. Sign the admission form or be brought back in restraints after a 72-hour hold at the county hospital." That's when I realized the true scope of the trap they'd built around me. This wasn't just about Michael wanting me in a nursing home. This wasn't just about my house or my independence. This was about something much bigger, something much worse. And the young nurse in the hallway, still shaking her head slowly, seemed to be my only ally in a room full of enemies. The silence in Jennifer's office stretched like a wire about to snap. I looked from Michael to Jennifer and back again, searching their faces for some sign that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. But Michael's eyes had gone cold, and Jennifer was already reaching for her phone. "Dr. Patterson, please," she said into the receiver. "Mrs. Manning is here, and we need to discuss her evaluation." "Wait," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Let me understand this. You're telling me that if I don't voluntarily commit myself to this facility, you'll have me declared mentally incompetent?" "It's not about declaring you incompetent, Grandma," Michael said, but his tone had lost all pretense of warmth. "It's about getting you the care you need. Dr. Rodriguez has documented your increasing confusion, your memory lapses. I have photographs of the unpaid bills, the duplicate purchases, the medication mistakes." "Photographs?" The betrayal cut deeper with each revelation. "You've been documenting my life? Building a case against me?" "Building a case for you," he corrected, "to show that you need supervised care." A knock at the door interrupted us, and Jennifer called out, "Come in." The man who entered was tall and silver-haired, wearing a white coat with "Dr. Patterson, M.D., Medical Director," embroidered on the pocket. He carried a clipboard, and had the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Mrs. Manning," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "I'm Dr. Patterson. I've been reviewing your case with Michael and your primary physician. We're all very concerned about your ability to live independently." "My case?" I stood up, drawing on every ounce of dignity I could muster. "Doctor, I came here for a tour. I was not aware that I was being evaluated for anything." Dr. Patterson exchanged a look with Michael before continuing. "Mrs. Manning, your grandson has documented several concerning incidents over the past few months. Confusion about medications, missed appointments, unpaid bills, safety concerns in your home. These are all warning signs of cognitive decline." "I am not cognitively impaired," I said firmly. "I may have made some mistakes lately. Anyone my age would. But that doesn't mean I need to be locked up. This isn't prison, Mrs. Manning," Dr. Patterson said in that condescending tone I'd heard doctors use before. "This is a care facility designed to help people like you maintain their dignity while receiving the support they need." "People like me," I repeated. "You mean old people who inconveniently want to remain in their own homes." Jennifer cleared her throat. "Mrs. Manning, perhaps if you just reviewed the admission agreement one more time." "No." I moved toward the door, but Dr. Patterson stepped slightly to block my path. "Mrs. Manning, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Based on the documentation Michael has provided and my preliminary assessment during this visit, I have concerns about your capacity to make sound decisions regarding your care and safety." The room felt like it was closing in. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you refuse voluntary admission, I'm prepared to initiate an involuntary psychiatric hold for evaluation. During that evaluation, we would assess your competency to make medical and financial decisions for yourself." The trap was closing. I could see it now with crystal clarity. Michael had been planning this for months, maybe longer. The power of attorney I'd unknowingly signed, the documentation of my minor mistakes and forgetful moments, the coordination with my doctor and this facility. Even my own grandson had become a stranger, someone willing to steal my freedom for reasons I couldn't yet understand. "Why?" I whispered, looking directly at Michael. "Why are you doing this to me?" For the first time since we'd arrived, Michael's composure cracked slightly. "Because I love you, Grandma. Because I can't stand watching you struggle. Because that house is too much for you, and you're too stubborn to admit it. But why the lies? Why the deception? If you were truly concerned, why didn't you talk to me honestly?" Michael's jaw tightened. "Because you never would have agreed. You're too proud, too set in your ways. This is the only way to help you." There it was, the truth behind all the manipulation. He didn't think I was capable of making decisions about my own life, so he decided to make them for me. The power of attorney, the documentation, the coordination with medical professionals, all of it designed to take away my choices and replace them with his. But there was something else, something in the way Michael kept glancing at his watch, in the way Jennifer had immediately pulled out that specific folder, in the urgency of Dr. Patterson's evaluation. This wasn't just about concern for my well-being. "There's more to this," I said slowly. "This isn't just about my health or safety, is it?" Michael's face flushed. "I don't know what you mean." "The house, Michael. You mentioned the house is going on the market next week. How is that possible when I haven't agreed to sell it? The power of attorney gives me the power of attorney you tricked me into signing." I felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "You need me declared incompetent so you can sell the house without my consent. This isn't about my care at all. This is about money." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's face had gone white, and Jennifer was suddenly very interested in organizing the papers on her desk. "How much is it worth, Michael?" I asked quietly. "The house Harold and I bought for $18,000 in 1972? How much is it worth now?" "Grandma, that's not—" "How much?" Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Mrs. Manning, I think we should focus on your immediate care needs rather than financial matters." $800,000, Michael said suddenly. "Maybe more. The Denver market has exploded, and the lot is zoned for development." $800,000. No wonder he was in such a hurry to get me declared incompetent and the house on the market. "And how much of that were you planning to use for my care here?" I asked. Michael couldn't meet my eyes. "The facility costs about $6,000 a month, which means after 10 years here, assuming I live that long, there would still be over $200,000 left. Money that would go to you as my heir." I looked around the room at these 3 people who had conspired to steal my life. This was never about my well-being. This was about getting access to my money while I'm still alive to authorize it. The nurse I'd seen in the hallway chose that moment to knock on the door. "Dr. Patterson?" she said, stepping partway into the room. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation in room 312 that requires your immediate attention." "Can't it wait, Sarah?" Dr. Patterson asked impatiently. Sarah. The nurse's name was Sarah, and as she looked at me, I saw something in her eyes that gave me hope. She knew what was happening here. She knew, and she didn't approve. "I'm afraid not, doctor. It's quite urgent." Dr. Patterson sighed. "Very well, Mrs. Manning. I'll be back in just a few minutes. Please use this time to consider your options carefully." As soon as he left the room, Sarah stepped fully inside and closed the door behind her. "Mrs. Manning," she said quietly, "I need you to know that you have rights. You don't have to sign anything today. You don't have to agree to anything today. And if you feel you're being coerced or deceived, there are people you can call." Michael started to protest, but Sarah held up her hand. "I've been a nurse here for 8 years, she continued. "I've seen this situation before. Not often, but often enough to know the signs. Mrs. Manning, do you want to be here?" "No," I said firmly. "I do not." "Then you don't have to stay." Jennifer and Michael both started talking at once, but Sarah's voice cut through their protests. "Mrs. Manning, you are not under arrest. You have not been declared incompetent by any court. A single doctor's recommendation for evaluation does not strip you of your legal rights. If you want to leave, you can leave." For the first time since walking into this building, I felt like I could breathe. "But if I leave," I asked, "what happens then?" Sarah glanced toward the door, then back at me. "That depends on what you do next. But Mrs. Manning, there are people who can help you. People who know how these situations work, who can protect your rights." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small card, pressing it into my hand. "Elder Advocacy Services," she whispered. "Call them tonight." The card felt like a lifeline in my palm. For the first time since Michael had smiled and told me to sign those papers, I felt like I might have a chance to fight back. But first, I had to get out of this building. And something told me that wasn't going to be as easy as Sarah made it sound. The business card in my palm felt warm against my skin as I closed my fingers around it. Elder Advocacy Services of Colorado. I'd never heard of such a thing, but right now it felt like my only hope. "Sarah," I said quietly, "how do I leave? Just walk out?" Before she could answer, Dr. Patterson's voice echoed from the hallway, growing closer. Sarah quickly moved away from me, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Mrs. Manning," she said in a normal tone, "please let me know if you need anything. I'll be at the nurse's station." The door opened and Dr. Patterson returned, followed by a security guard I hadn't seen before. The guard positioned himself near the door, not quite blocking it, but making his presence unmistakably clear. "Now then," Dr. Patterson said, settling back into his chair. "Where were we?" "I was leaving," I said, standing up and straightening my shoulders. "I've decided not to pursue admission at this time." "Mrs. Manning," Dr. Patterson's voice took on that patronizing tone again. "I don't think you fully understand your situation. Based on my observations during this visit, I have serious concerns about your judgment and decision-making capacity." "What observations?" I demanded. "I've answered every question clearly. I've been completely coherent throughout this entire deceptive process." "Your defensiveness and paranoid ideation are concerning," he said, making notes on his clipboard. "Your belief that people are conspiring against you, your refusal to accept help from family members who clearly care about you." "Paranoid?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Doctor, my grandson lied to me about the purpose of this visit. He filled out admission forms without my knowledge. He obtained power of attorney under false pretenses." "These aren't paranoid delusions. These are facts." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Grandma, I never lied to you. I just simplified things to avoid upsetting you unnecessarily." "Simplified?" I turned to face him fully. "Michael, you told me this was a tour. You told me we were gathering information for the future. You told me that power of attorney was just for insurance purposes. At what point exactly? Were you planning to tell me the truth?" "The truth is that you need care." Michael's composure finally cracked completely. "The truth is that you're becoming a danger to yourself. The truth is that I've been cleaning up your mistakes for months, covering for you, protecting you from the consequences of your failing memory." "What mistakes? What consequences? You left your front door unlocked all night 3 weeks ago. Mrs. Henderson next door called me because she was worried. You put aluminum foil in the microwave and nearly started a fire. You went to the pharmacy twice in one day trying to fill the same prescription because you forgot you'd already picked it up. Each accusation stung because they contained grains of truth. I had been more forgetful lately, more anxious about daily tasks. But these were minor incidents, the kind of small mistakes anyone could make, especially someone dealing with the stress of widowhood and aging. Those are not signs of incompetence, I said firmly. Those are signs of being human, of being 78 years old, of living alone for the first time in 50 years of marriage. Dr. Patterson made more notes. Mrs. Manning, your inability to recognize your own limitations is itself a symptom of cognitive decline. Anosognosia, the lack of awareness of one's own condition. I'd never heard the word before, but I understood what he was doing. He was pathologizing my resistance to their plan, turning my refusal to accept their version of reality into proof of mental illness. Doctor, I said, drawing on every ounce of dignity I possessed, I am fully aware of my limitations. I know I'm not as sharp as I was 10 years ago. I know I need to be more careful about certain things. But being aware of my limitations doesn't mean I'm ready to surrender my autonomy to people who have lied to me and manipulated me. Your grandson hasn't manipulated you. He's tried to help you make the best decisions for your well-being. By lying to me about the purpose of this visit, by filing out admission forms without my knowledge, by obtaining power of attorney under false pretenses, I could feel my voice rising, but I didn't care. If Michael truly had my best interests at heart, why didn't he have an honest conversation with me about his concerns? Why the deception? The room fell silent. Even the security guard seemed to be listening intently. Finally, Jennifer spoke up. Mrs. Manning, sometimes families have to make difficult decisions. Sometimes the kindest thing is to handle transitions gradually, to avoid causing unnecessary distress. Unnecessary distress? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think finding out I've been tricked and manipulated is less distressing than having an honest conversation about my future? I looked around the room at these 3 people who had conspired to take away my freedom. Michael, the grandson I'd loved and trusted. Jennifer, the smooth-talking administrator. Dr. Patterson, hiding behind medical authority and big words. Let me tell you what I think is happening here, I said. I think Michael wants access to the money from selling my house. I think this facility gets paid whether I'm here voluntarily or not. And I think Dr. Patterson is willing to rubber stamp whatever diagnosis supports getting me admitted. Dr. Patterson's face darkened. Mrs. Manning, I resent the implication. I'm not implying anything, doctor. I'm stating it directly. I stood up and walked toward the door. I'm leaving, now. The security guard looked to Dr. Patterson for guidance. Mrs. Manning, Dr. Patterson said, if you leave against medical advice, I'll have no choice but to initiate emergency commitment proceedings. You'll be picked up by County Mental Health Services within 24 hours and brought back for mandatory evaluation. On what grounds? On the grounds that you pose a danger to yourself due to diminished capacity. The threat hung in the air like a sword. I could feel the walls closing in, but something inside me refused to surrender. Maybe it was Harold's voice in my memory, telling me to stand up for what's right, Dot. Maybe it was the thought of losing everything I'd worked for my entire life. Or maybe it was just stubborn pride. Doctor, I said quietly, are you aware that threatening someone with involuntary commitment to coerce them into voluntary admission is both unethical and illegal? His face went pale. Mrs. Manning, I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining your options. You're explaining how you'll punish me if I don't comply with your wishes. I pulled out the card Sarah had given me. I'm calling Elder Advocacy Services, right now. I moved toward the phone on Jennifer's desk, but Michael stepped forward. Grandma, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. Just sign the papers, get settled in, and we can work out all the details later. Work out what details, Michael? The part where you sell my house without my consent? The part where you make medical decisions for me? The part where I never see my own home again? You can visit the house anytime you want. Visit? The word came out as a whisper. Visit my own home? For the first time, I saw something crack in Michael's facade. A flicker of guilt, perhaps even shame. I'm doing this because I love you, he said, but his voice had lost its conviction. No, Michael. You're doing this because it's easier than having difficult conversations. You're doing this because you want my money. And you're doing this because you think I'm too old and too weak to fight back. I looked directly into his eyes, those green eyes that had once looked at me with such love and trust. You're wrong about that last part. I picked up the phone on Jennifer's desk and dialed the number on Sarah's card. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered. Elder Advocacy Services, this is Maria. My name is Dorothy Manning, I said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. I'm being held at Sunset Manor Nursing Home against my will. I'm being coerced into signing admission papers through threats of involuntary commitment. I need help immediately. Dr. Patterson lunged for the phone, but I held it away from him. Ma'am? Maria's voice was calm and professional. Are you in immediate physical danger? I don't know. There's a security guard here, and they won't let me leave. Mrs. Manning, listen carefully. You have the right to refuse medical treatment. You have the right to leave any facility unless you've been legally committed by a court order. Do not sign anything. Do not agree to anything. We're sending an advocate to your location immediately. How long? Dr. Patterson snatched the phone from my hand and hung it up. Mrs. Manning, he said, his face flushed with anger. You've just made a very poor decision. That call will be interpreted as evidence of paranoid delusions and inability to recognize your need for care. But something had changed in the room. The security guard was looking uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Jennifer was shuffling papers nervously. Even Michael seemed less certain than he had moments before. Actually, said a voice from the doorway, that call will be interpreted as evidence of a competent adult exercising her legal rights. We all turned to see Sarah standing in the doorway, no longer alone. Behind her stood a woman in a business suit carrying a briefcase, and next to her was a man in a police uniform. Mrs. Manning, the woman in the suit said, stepping into the room. I'm Amanda Rodriguez from Elder Advocacy Services. Officer Martinez here is with the County Sheriff's Department. We need to speak with you privately. Dr. Patterson stepped forward. Officer, this is a medical facility. We're dealing with a patient who requires immediate psychiatric evaluation. Doctor, Officer Martinez interrupted. Unless you have a court order for involuntary commitment, Mrs. Manning is free to make her own decisions about her medical care. And unless she's under arrest, she's free to leave this facility at any time. This is highly irregular, Jennifer protested. We have proper procedures. So do we, Amanda Rodriguez said crisply. She turned to me. Mrs. Manning, would you like to leave this facility? Yes, then let's go. As I moved toward the door, Michael grabbed my arm. Grandma, please, you're making a mistake. I'm just trying to protect you. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. This young man I'd loved unconditionally for 28 years. This boy I'd helped raise, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose dreams I'd encouraged. Michael, I said softly, the biggest mistake I made was trusting you. I gently pulled my arm free and walked toward the door. As I passed Sarah, she squeezed my hand briefly. You did the right thing, she whispered. But as we walked down the hallway toward the exit, I could hear Dr. Patterson's voice behind us, speaking on the phone. Yes, this is Dr. Patterson at Sunset Manor. I need to report a psychiatric emergency. I have an elderly woman who's displaying signs of severe paranoid delusions and is refusing necessary medical care. Amanda Rodriguez heard it too. Don't worry, she said quietly. He can make all the calls he wants. Without a court order, they're just noise. But I knew this wasn't over. I'd won this battle, but the war for my freedom had just begun. And as we pushed through the front doors of Sunset Manor into the crisp autumn air, I realized I had no idea who else might be involved in this conspiracy. The only thing I knew for certain was that I couldn't go home. Not yet. Not until I understood exactly how deep this betrayal went and who else I could no longer trust. The parking lot of Sunset Manor felt like a different world as I stood in the autumn sunshine, breathing free air for the first time in hours. Amanda Rodriguez guided me to a bench near the entrance, while Officer Martinez spoke quietly into his radio. Mrs. Manning, Amanda said, sitting beside me, I need you to tell me everything that happened in there, from the beginning. So I did. I told her about Michael's visit on Tuesday, about his claims that this was just a tour, about the forms with my name already filled in, about the power of attorney I'd unknowingly signed. As I spoke, Amanda took notes in a small leather notebook, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Do you have a copy of the power of attorney document? She asked. No, Michael showed it to me, but he kept it. We'll need to get a copy from your bank or wherever it was filed. Do you remember what you thought you were signing when you signed it? Michael said it was an insurance form. He said it would help him access my medical information if I was ever in an emergency. The memory stung with fresh betrayal. I trusted him completely. He was my favorite grandchild, the one who never forgot my birthday, who fixed things around the house without being asked. Amanda nodded sympathetically. Mrs. Manning, this type of financial abuse by family members is more common than you might think. The fact that you recognized what was happening and resisted shows that your judgment and decision-making abilities are intact. Dr. Patterson said my resistance was a symptom of mental illness. He had a word for it, anosognosia. It's a real condition, but it's often misused to pathologize normal self-advocacy. Amanda closed her notebook. Mrs. Manning, I have some difficult questions to ask you. Do you feel safe going home right now? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Michael has keys to your house, correct? He has power of attorney that he might try to use to access your accounts or property. He's already demonstrated a willingness to deceive you about his intentions. I'm concerned about what might happen if you go home alone tonight. The implications hit me like a cold wave. I'd been so focused on escaping Sunset Manor that I hadn't thought about what came next. Michael knew I'd refused to sign the admission papers. He knew I'd called for help. What would he do now? I hadn't thought. I trailed off, feeling suddenly vulnerable. Officer Martinez approached us. Mrs. Manning, I've just been informed that Dr. Patterson has filed a petition for emergency psychiatric evaluation. It's been submitted to the county mental health department. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? Amanda answered. It means they're going to try to have you picked up for involuntary evaluation within the next 24 to 72 hours. But Mrs. Manning, listen to me carefully. You still have rights. You can contest this petition. You can demand a hearing. And most importantly, you can have legal representation. I don't understand any of this, I said, feeling overwhelmed. This morning, I thought my biggest problem was deciding what to have for lunch. Now I'm apparently fighting for my freedom. You're not fighting alone, Amanda said firmly. That's why our organization exists. Mrs. Manning, I'd like to suggest that you stay somewhere other than your home tonight while we sort this out. Do you have friends or family you trust? I thought about it. Patricia, Michael's mother, had been distant since Harold died. My other grandchildren lived in different states. Most of my close friends had either moved away or passed on. There's my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, I said slowly. Michael mentioned she'd called him about something. She and I have been friends for 20 years. Good. Officer Martinez can escort you home to pack a bag, then take you to Mrs. Henderson's house. Meanwhile, I'll start working on your legal protections. As we walked toward Officer Martinez's patrol car, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Sarah, the nurse who'd helped me. Mrs. Manning, I'm glad you got out. She glanced around nervously, then stepped closer. I wanted you to know, what happened in there today isn't unusual. It's not the first time I've seen families bring elderly relatives here under false pretenses. Really? There's a woman in room 218, Mrs. Chen. Her son brought her for a visit 6 months ago. She's still here, still asking when she can go home. And Mr. Thompson in 301, his daughter had him admitted for temporary respite care after his wife died. That was 2 years ago. My blood ran cold. Are you saying they can't leave? I'm saying that once you're admitted, once you've signed those papers or been declared incompetent, it becomes very difficult to change your status. The families control the money, the facilities get paid, the doctors defer to family wishes, the residents, they adjust, eventually. Most of them. Why are you telling me this? Sarah glanced back toward the building. Because I became a nurse to help people, not to be part of a system that traps them. Because what I saw in that office today was wrong. And because, she hesitated, then continued, because my own grandmother went through something similar. I was too young to understand what was happening, but looking back, I think my uncle had her placed in a facility so he could sell her house. What happened to her? She died there, 18 months later. She never stopped asking to go home. The weight of what I'd narrowly escaped hit me fully. This wasn't just about one corrupt facility or one manipulative grandson. This was a system designed to separate elderly people from their autonomy and their assets, with just enough legal cover to make it seem legitimate. Sarah, are there others? Other families doing this? More than you'd think. Sunset Manor caters to families who want to place elderly relatives quickly, with minimal questions asked. They have relationships with certain doctors, certain lawyers. They make the process smooth. Amanda had been listening to our conversation. Sarah, would you be willing to speak with our investigators? What you're describing sounds like a pattern of abuse. Sarah looked nervous. I could lose my job. You could also save lives, Amanda replied gently. People like Mrs. Manning who might not be as fortunate or as strong as she is. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Ladies, I hate to interrupt, but we should get Mrs. Manning settled somewhere safe before it gets dark. As we walked toward the patrol car, Sarah called out one more time. Mrs. Manning, be careful who you trust. If they were willing to go this far, they might not stop here. Her words echoed in my mind as we drove through the familiar streets of my neighborhood. Be careful who you trust. How do you rebuild trust when the person who betrayed you was the one you trusted most? But as we pulled into my driveway, I saw Mrs. Henderson working in her front garden. She looked up as the police car stopped, her face filled with concern and curiosity. This woman who had been my neighbor for 20 years, who had brought me casseroles after Harold's funeral, who had called Michael when she was worried about me. Had she been worried about me? Or had she been reporting on me? As I got out of the car, I realized that Sarah's warning applied to everyone in my life now. I couldn't assume anyone's motives were pure. I couldn't take anyone's word at face value. The paranoia that Dr. Patterson had accused me of was becoming my new reality. But maybe, in this case, a little paranoia was just good sense. Mrs. Henderson's reaction to seeing me emerge from a police car was everything I could have hoped for in a friend. She dropped her gardening shears and hurried across her front yard, her face creased with genuine concern. Dorothy, what's happened? Are you all right? Officer Martinez introduced himself and briefly explained that I needed a safe place to stay while some family issues were sorted out. Mrs. Henderson didn't hesitate. Of course she can stay here, she said immediately. Dorothy, you know you're always welcome. But what family issues? Is Michael all right? The question hung in the air as Officer Martinez escorted me to my front door to pack a bag. I used my own key, which felt strangely reassuring after the afternoon's events. But as I walked through my familiar living room, everything looked different somehow, violated. I quickly packed a small suitcase with clothes and toiletries, grabbed my important documents from Harold's old desk, and added a few photos. As I was closing the suitcase, I heard voices from the kitchen. Michael was here. Told me she was having delusions, he was saying to Officer Martinez. Paranoid thoughts about family members trying to hurt her. I'm very concerned about her mental state. I walked into the kitchen carrying my suitcase. Michael's face went pale when he saw me. Grandma, thank God you're safe. When Dr. Patterson called and said you'd left the facility with strangers, I was terrified something had happened to you. His performance was flawless, the concerned grandson, the loving family member. If I hadn't lived through the afternoon's events myself, I might have believed him. Hello, Michael, I said calmly. I'm fine, as you can see. Grandma, we need to talk. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Dr. Patterson explained everything to me. He said you became confused and thought we were trying to force you into the nursing home. There was no misunderstanding, Michael. You lied to me. You told me we were going for a tour, but you had already filled out admission paperwork. You obtained power of attorney under false pretenses. These aren't delusions. These are facts. Michael looked to Officer Martinez as if seeking support. Officer, as you can see, she's having difficulty distinguishing between reality and her fears. This is exactly what Dr. Patterson was concerned about. But Officer Martinez had been present for my conversation with Amanda Rodriguez. He'd heard my clear, coherent account of the day's events. Mr. Chen, the officer said, your grandmother seems perfectly lucid to me, and she has every right to refuse medical treatment or facility placement. But the power of attorney doesn't give you the right to make decisions against her expressed wishes unless she's been declared legally incompetent by a court. Has that happened? Michael's jaw tightened. Not yet, but Dr. Patterson is filing the necessary paperwork. Until then, your grandmother is legally competent to make her own decisions. I watched Michael's facade begin to crack. The concerned grandson was giving way to someone harder, more calculating. Grandma, he said, turning back to me, you can't keep living here alone. You're not safe. Last week you left the door unlocked all night. Mrs. Henderson called me because she was worried. Mrs. Henderson, who had been listening from the doorway, spoke up. Actually, Michael, I called you because I saw Dorothy's door standing wide open at 3 in the morning. I was concerned she might have had a medical emergency. Exactly, Michael said. She's becoming forgetful, dangerous to herself. But when I went to check on her, Mrs. Henderson continued, Dorothy was sound asleep in her bed. The door was open because someone had opened it from the outside. There were muddy footprints on her front porch that didn't match her shoes. The kitchen fell silent. I stared at Mrs. Henderson, then at Michael. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying someone else opened that door, Dorothy. Someone who wanted it to look like you'd left it open by mistake. Michael's face had gone white. That's ridiculous. Who would do such a thing? But I was remembering other incidents now. The duplicate purchases at the grocery store. But I distinctly remembered putting the extra items back on the shelf. The missed electric payment. But I'd set up automatic payments years ago. The medication confusion. But my pill organizer had been rearranged when I hadn't touched it. Michael, I said slowly, have you been in my house when I wasn't here? I have keys for emergencies. That's not what I asked. Have you been in my house without my knowledge, creating these incidents you've been documenting? The silence stretched between us. Michael's mask was completely gone now, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. You can't prove anything, he said finally. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Actually, Mr. Chen, if you've been entering Mrs. Manning's home without permission and tampering with her belongings, that's criminal activity. Breaking and entering, fraud, elder abuse. I was protecting her, Michael burst out. She's too stubborn to admit she needs help. I had to create evidence that would convince the doctor she was declining. The confession hung in the air like a bomb. Mrs. Henderson gasped. Officer Martinez was already reaching for his handcuffs. Michael Chen, he said, you're under arrest for elder abuse and fraud. But Michael wasn't finished. As Officer Martinez read him his rights, he looked directly at me with eyes full of rage. You want to know the truth, Grandma? I need that money. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. My business is failing. I owe money to people who will hurt me if I don't pay them back. That house is worth $800,000, and you're just sitting on it, getting older every day, becoming more of a burden every month. Each word was like a slap. This was my grandson, the boy I'd helped raise, the young man I'd thought loved me. You were going to steal my home, I whispered. I was going to inherit it anyway, he snarled. I just needed access to it now, when it could actually save my life. So you were willing to destroy mine. You're old. You don't have that many years left anyway. At least this way, your money could do some good instead of just sitting in a bank account while you slowly die in that house. Officer Martinez had heard enough. He cuffed Michael and began walking him toward the door. Wait, I called out. Michael! He turned back, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the boy I'd once known. I would have helped you, I said quietly. If you had come to me honestly, told me you were in trouble, asked for help, I would have helped you. I might not have given you everything, but I would have helped. His face crumpled. You would have wanted to know everything. You would have lectured me about responsibility. You would have tried to control how I fixed my problems. So instead, you decided to control me. As Officer Martinez led Michael away, I sank into one of my kitchen chairs, feeling decades older than I had that morning. Mrs. Henderson sat beside me and took my hand. Dorothy, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what he was doing. He fooled all of us, I said, even me, and I thought I knew him better than anyone. But the hardest part wasn't Michael's betrayal, devastating as it was. The hardest part was realizing that this probably wasn't over. Michael had mentioned being in debt to dangerous people. He'd been desperate enough to try to have me committed and steal my house. What would those people do when they learned their money wasn't coming? And more importantly, who else in my family knew about Michael's plan? Who else might have been counting on my money? As if summoned by my thoughts, the phone rang. Mrs. Henderson answered it. Dorothy, it's your daughter Patricia. She sounds upset. I took the phone with a heavy heart. Patricia was Michael's mother. She would have heard about his arrest by now. Mom? Patricia's voice was tense, angry. What the hell did you do to Michael? And just like that, I realized the battle for my freedom was far from over. Patricia's voice through the phone was like ice. Mom, Michael is in jail. He says you had him arrested because he was trying to help you. He says you've become paranoid and delusional. I looked at Mrs. Henderson, who was listening with growing concern. Patricia, I said carefully, Michael tried to have me committed to a nursing home today under false pretenses. He forged documents, lied to medical professionals, and has been sabotaging my home to make me appear incompetent. He confessed to all of this in front of a police officer. That's ridiculous. Michael loves you. He would never. He did it to get access to my house money. He owes people money, Patricia. Dangerous people, according to him. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, Patricia said finally, I'm coming over. We need to talk. I'm not at home right now. Where are you? Something in her tone made me cautious. I'm staying with a friend tonight. Which friend? Mom, you need to come home. There are papers that need to be signed, arrangements that need to be made. Michael might have made some mistakes, but he was right about one thing. You can't keep living alone. Patricia, are you saying you were part of this plan? Another long silence. I'm saying that Michael isn't the only one who's been worried about you. I'm saying that what happened today doesn't change the fact that you need care. I'm saying that we're your family, and we know what's best for you. My blood ran cold. Patricia had been part of it. Maybe not the day-to-day deception, but she'd known about the plan to have me placed in a facility. How many of you were involved? I asked. Mom, you're being dramatic. How many of you, Patricia? You, Michael? Who else? Your brother David? The other grandchildren? We've all been concerned. That's not what I asked. Mrs. Henderson was watching my face with growing alarm. She pulled out her cell phone and started typing. Mom, Patricia said, I'm coming to get you. You're confused and upset, and you're not making good decisions. Michael might have gone about things the wrong way, but he was right about your condition. My condition is that I'm 78 years old, and I want to live in my own home. That's not a medical condition, Patricia. That's a preference. It's an unrealistic preference for someone in your state. What state is that exactly? Mom, you know what state. The forgetting, the confusion, the poor judgment. You mean the forgetting, confusion, and poor judgment that Michael created by breaking into my house and manipulating my environment? The incidents he staged to build a case against me? You can't prove that. Actually, I can. He confessed in front of witnesses. I heard Patricia take a sharp breath. He what? He admitted to everything, Patricia. Creating false evidence, documenting fake incidents, obtaining power of attorney under false pretenses. He did it all to steal my money, and now he's in jail for elder abuse. Mrs. Henderson held up her phone to show me what she'd been typing. Amanda Rodriguez is on her way. Stall. Mom, Patricia said, even if Michael did some of those things, it doesn't change the fact that you need help. It doesn't change the fact that you can't live alone safely. According to whom? According to all of us who love you and have been watching you struggle? Or according to all of you who want access to my money? The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. How dare you, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. How much debt are you in, Patricia? Silence. How much money do you need? Did Michael promise you a share if his plan worked? Were you all planning to split the proceeds from selling my house? Mom, you're being paranoid. I'm being realistic. My grandson tried to have me declared mentally incompetent today so he could steal my house. My daughter is now calling me paranoid for resisting that plan. My neighbor has evidence that someone was breaking into my home to create fake incidents. Exactly which part of this situation doesn't warrant some suspicion? I heard a car door slam outside. Then Patricia's voice became urgent. Mom, I'm at your house. Your front door is standing open. Where are you? My front door was open? I looked at Mrs. Henderson, who was already moving toward her window. Dorothy, she whispered, there are 2 cars in your driveway. One is Patricia's, but I don't recognize the other one. Mom, answer me. Where are you? There are papers scattered all over your kitchen floor. It looks like someone broke in. But I hadn't left papers scattered anywhere. I'd packed my bag carefully, locked my door, and left with Officer Martinez just 2 hours ago. Patricia, get out of the house and call the police. Don't be ridiculous, I'm looking around to see what's missing. Mrs. Henderson was still watching from her window. Dorothy, there's someone else moving around inside your house. Someone besides Patricia. My heart started racing. Patricia, listen to me carefully. Get out of the house right now. There's someone else in there. Don't be silly, Mom. There's no one. The line went dead. Mrs. Henderson was already dialing 911. I stared at my phone, my mind racing. Patricia had said my front door was standing open, papers scattered on the floor. But I'd locked the door when I left. Someone had broken in after we'd gone. Someone who knew I wasn't home. Someone who knew I'd be staying somewhere else tonight. Dorothy, Mrs. Henderson said. "The police are on their way, but I think we should leave. Right now." "Leave? Why?" "Because whoever is in your house might come looking for you, and they might not stop with Patricia." As if to punctuate her point, we heard shouting from across the street, Patricia's voice, raised in anger or fear, then another voice, deeper, male. "Oh God," I whispered, "the people Michael owes money to. They're here." Mrs. Henderson grabbed her car keys. "We're leaving, now!" But as we headed for her back door, we heard footsteps on her front porch, heavy, deliberate footsteps. We were trapped. Mrs. Henderson pulled me away from the windows and into her basement. "I'm calling Amanda Rodriguez," she whispered. "She said to call if anything happened." As we crouched in the darkness of Mrs. Henderson's basement, listening to footsteps moving around upstairs, I realized that escaping from Sunset Manor had been just the beginning. Michael's desperation had put dangerous people in motion, and now my entire family was at risk. But for the first time in hours, I wasn't afraid. I was angry. These people had underestimated a 78-year-old woman who had survived the Great Depression, raised 3 children, buried a husband, and built a life through sheer determination and grit. They were about to learn that stealing from me wouldn't be as easy as they'd thought. The sound of sirens broke through the October night like a promise of salvation. Mrs. Henderson and I huddled in her basement, listening as multiple police cars converged on our quiet neighborhood. Through the basement window, we could see red and blue lights painting the walls like a chaotic light show. "Dorothy," Mrs. Henderson whispered, "I think it's safe to go up now." We climbed the basement stairs cautiously. Through her front window, I could see my house surrounded by police cars. Officers with flashlights were escorting 2 men in handcuffs to separate patrol cars, while paramedics were wheeling someone on a stretcher toward an ambulance. "Patricia," I gasped, recognizing my daughter's gray hair. "Mrs. Manning!" Amanda Rodriguez appeared at Mrs. Henderson's front door, slightly out of breath. "Are you both all right?" "We're fine, but my daughter, she's okay, shaken up but physically unharmed. The men who broke into your house roughed her up a bit when she surprised them, but she'll be fine." Amanda guided us to Mrs. Henderson's living room and sat down across from us. "Dorothy, I need to tell you what we've learned in the past few hours. It's more extensive than we initially thought." She pulled out her notebook and flipped through several pages. Michael wasn't just in debt to loan sharks. He'd been systematically stealing from elderly clients through his financial planning business. When that money ran out, he got desperate. The men who broke into your house tonight were sent by people who'd invested their life savings with Michael under false pretenses. The scope of my grandson's betrayal kept expanding. How many people? At least 12 that we know of so far. Elderly clients who trusted him with their retirement funds. When the money disappeared, Michael promised them he had access to family assets that would cover their losses. My house, your savings, your late husband's pension benefits. He'd essentially mortgaged your entire financial future to cover his theft from other elderly people. I felt sick. All those times Michael had visited, all those conversations about my finances that I'd thought were loving concern. He'd been cataloging my assets like a thief taking inventory. "But it gets worse," Amanda continued. "Dr. Patterson at Sunset Manor has been part of a scheme involving at least 6 facilities in the Denver area. They fast-track elderly people into permanent care based on questionable psychiatric evaluations, then work with family members to liquidate assets quickly." "How many people?" "We're still investigating, but potentially hundreds over the past 5 years. Families bring elderly relatives for tours or temporary respite care, then use manufactured evidence of incompetence to gain control of their assets." Mrs. Henderson shook her head in disgust. "How is this legal?" "It isn't," Amanda said, "but it's been carefully orchestrated to appear legal. The right doctors, the right documentation, families who vouch for each other's concerns. By the time the elderly person realizes what's happening, they're already in the system, and getting out requires legal battles that most can't afford or navigate." I thought about Sarah's words about Mrs. Chen and Mr. Thompson, still in that facility, still asking when they could go home. What happens to them now? The people already trapped in these places? That's going to be a long process. We'll need to review each case individually, determine who was placed legitimately and who was defrauded. Some will be able to return home with proper support services. Others, Amanda's voice trailed off. "Others will die there," I finished. "Some will, yes. The trauma of being separated from their homes, combined with the institutional environment, often accelerates decline in elderly people. It's one of the cruelest aspects of this type of abuse. We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what had almost happened to me and what was still happening to others. "Where does this leave me?" I asked. "Legally, you're completely clear. The power of attorney Michael obtained was invalid due to fraud. Your house, your savings, all your assets remain under your control. Michael and his associates will face federal charges for elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy." "And Patricia?" Amanda's expression softened. "Your daughter was a victim too, in a way. Michael had convinced her that you were declining mentally and needed intervention. She thought she was helping. However, once she learned the truth tonight, after being confronted by Michael's creditors, she's been very cooperative with our investigation." "Can I see her?" "She's at the hospital getting checked out, but she specifically asked me to tell you that she's sorry. She said she never would have supported Michael's plan if she'd known he was stealing from other people to fund it." I wasn't sure how to feel about Patricia's apology. She'd been willing to override my autonomy based on Michael's lies, but she'd also been manipulated, just as I had been. "What happens now?" Mrs. Henderson asked. "Now," Amanda said, "Dorothy gets to go home and live her life however she chooses. We'll have increased security at her house for a few weeks while the investigation continues, just to be safe, and we'll be working with other elderly people who've been victimized by this network." "And you'll shut down these facilities?" "Sunset Manor will be closed pending investigation. Dr. Patterson's medical license has been suspended. Jennifer and several other administrators are facing charges. But Dorothy, this is bigger than just one facility. This is a systemic problem that requires systemic solutions." 3 months later, I was sitting in my own kitchen, drinking coffee from Harold's old mug and reading the morning newspaper. The headlines still occasionally featured updates about what the media had dubbed the Denver elder care scandal. But life had settled into something resembling normal. Michael was awaiting trial, facing multiple federal charges that would likely result in decades in prison. 12 elderly victims of his financial fraud had recovered portions of their stolen savings, though some would never fully recoup their losses. Dr. Patterson had lost his medical license and was facing his own criminal charges. Sunset Manor and 3 other facilities had been permanently closed. Most importantly, Mrs. Chen and Mr. Thompson and dozens of other elderly people had been released from improper placements and were either back in their own homes with support services or in legitimate facilities of their own choosing. Patricia and I were slowly rebuilding our relationship. She visited every Sunday now, and we were learning to talk honestly about the fear and vulnerability that had made her susceptible to Michael's manipulation. She'd started seeing a counselor to work through her guilt about nearly becoming complicit in stealing my autonomy. "The hardest part," she'd told me the week before, "is realizing that I was so afraid of losing you that I was willing to take away everything that made you who you are." Amanda Rodriguez had become not just my advocate, but my friend. She'd helped me establish a proper support network, a house cleaner who came twice a week, a handyman for repairs, a medical alert system for emergencies, and most importantly, connections with other elderly people who were living independently and thriving. "Independence doesn't mean isolation," Amanda had explained. "It means having the support you need to make your own choices." Mrs. Henderson had moved beyond being just a neighbor to being family. We had dinner together twice a week, took turns checking on each other, and had developed a system of signals, porch lights, curtain positions, that let us know all was well without being intrusive. But perhaps the most meaningful relationship to emerge from this ordeal was with Sarah, the nurse who had first warned me about the trap I was walking into. She'd left Sunset Manor the day after my escape and was now working with Amanda's organization to identify and assist other elderly people being victimized by their families or care providers. "What you did," she'd told me during one of her visits, "gave me the courage to speak up about what I'd been seeing. You saved not just yourself, but dozens of other people." The morning sun was streaming through my kitchen window, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. This kitchen where I'd raised my children, where Harold and I had shared thousands of meals, where I'd nearly signed away my freedom 3 months ago. My house phone rang, the same phone I'd used to call for help that desperate afternoon. "Dorothy, it's Amanda. Are you free this morning? I have someone I'd like you to meet." An hour later, Amanda arrived with a woman about my age, well-dressed, but with eyes that held a familiar wariness. Dorothy Manning. This is Rose Chen, Mrs. Chen's daughter-in-law. She's been helping us understand how her family was manipulated into placing her mother in Sunset Manor. Rose sat at my kitchen table, tears in her eyes. Mrs. Manning, my mother-in-law told me what you did, how you refused to sign those papers, how you called for help. She said you saved her life. I just stood up for myself, I said gently. I was lucky to have people who believed me. That's exactly why Amanda brought me here, Rose said. My mother-in-law wants to start a support group for families who've been through this, for elderly people who are facing pressure from family members, for anyone who needs to know their rights and how to protect them. The idea sparked something in me. A support group? More than that, Amanda added. Rose and her mother-in-law want to start an advocacy organization. They want you to help lead it. I thought about all the elderly people still vulnerable to the kind of manipulation I'd experienced. I thought about families like Patricia who might be genuinely concerned but easily misled. I thought about the professionals who were supposed to protect vulnerable people but were instead exploiting them. What would we do? Education mostly, Rose explained. Helping elderly people understand their rights. Teaching families how to have honest conversations about care needs without resorting to deception. Training professionals to recognize the signs of family-orchestrated abuse. And, Amanda added, providing rapid response when people find themselves in situations like you were in. A network of advocates, lawyers, and social workers who can intervene quickly when someone's autonomy is being threatened. I looked around my kitchen again, this space I'd nearly lost, this symbol of everything I'd fought to keep. Harold's presence seemed to fill the room, whispering his old encouragement. Stand up for what's right, Dot. When do we start? 6 months later, the Dorothy Manning Center for Elder Rights held its grand opening in a small office building in downtown Denver. The walls were painted a warm yellow, Harold's favorite color, and featured photos of elderly people who'd successfully fought for their independence. Mrs. Chen, now a sprightly 82-year-old back in her own apartment, cut the ribbon with scissors that shook only slightly in her hands. This center, she announced to the gathered crowd of families, advocates, and media, represents something simple but revolutionary. The idea that being old doesn't mean being powerless. As the crowd applauded, I caught sight of Sarah in her new role as our client services coordinator, Patricia chatting with other family members who'd learned to navigate elder care without resorting to deception, and Mrs. Henderson, who'd become our volunteer coordinator. But the moment that meant the most came at the end of the ceremony, when a young woman approached me with an elderly man leaning on her arm. Mrs. Manning, she said, this is my grandfather. His son was trying to force him into a nursing home by claiming he was incompetent. We heard about your center and called for help. Because of what you've built here, he's still in his own home, still making his own decisions. The elderly man looked at me with clear, bright eyes. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to give up without a fight. As I drove home that evening, taking the familiar route through my neighborhood, I reflected on how much had changed since that terrible October afternoon, when I'd thought I was just going to tour a nice facility with my beloved grandson. I'd learned that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt, but more carefully, with better boundaries. I'd learned that independence in old age wasn't about pretending you didn't need help, but about maintaining control over what help you accepted and from whom. I'd learned that being vulnerable didn't mean being powerless. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the biggest gift you can give others is simply refusing to be victimized yourself. My resistance to Michael's plan hadn't just saved my own freedom. It had created a ripple effect that was now protecting dozens of other elderly people. That night, as I locked my front door, the same door Michael had once opened to create false evidence against me, I felt Harold's presence more strongly than I had since his death. We did good, didn't we, Dot? I could almost hear him say. We did good, Harold. We did real good. I was 78 years old, living alone in a house worth almost $1 million, surrounded by support but not controlled by it, making my own decisions about my own life. I was exactly where I belonged. And tomorrow, I would help someone else stay exactly where they belong too.